Sit?
Cool. Yeah.
All right, Nancy.
Try out sitting.
All right. And then we'll walk and then we'll run. Probably don't even need mics. You think?
Does that help?
Yeah.
Sure. I think it's
Okay. All right. Okay, so the movie, after so many years of doing the TV show, what were you guys thinking that you were going to do a movie? Was it something that everybody talked about? What was the drive to get to the film?
Well, back in 2000, we were invited to the Aspen Comedy Festival. And it was the first time, I think, that a group had been invited there to not only win an award, but actually perform. So we had not done that before, and they invited us to go and actually do a reading, a staged reading of one of the scripts. And so I don't even think we didn't do a rehearsal for it. It was an honor. We got to go skiing and bring somebody with us, and they paid for everything. And it's like, as voice actors, we're all pretty much anonymous unless we're on camera actors. And Hank Azaria probably and Julie Kavner are probably the most two recognized in public. But on The Simpsons, none of us were really recognized for who we are and the voices that we do. And from this preamble, I'm just trying to lead up to the point that at that comedy festival, Matt Groening had announced publicly that we were going to be doing a Simpsons movie, and that was in 2000. Okay, that was the longest lead up for a movie I think that we've ever had, and they just found it actually incredibly difficult to write the movie and continue to do the TV show simultaneously, and that's been the challenge. And you know, here we are, we're still doing the TV show, and people, you guys want another movie? Do you want another feature film? Would you like to have a sequel?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the general consensus, you know, but they found out their instincts were correct. It is very difficult to do, not my job. There are a lot of people, it's a very collaborative type of an art form, but it's very difficult for the writers and for the technicians, the animators, to do their jobs.
It's a long process.
Yeah.
To do just the TV show, just a half-hour TV show, it takes how long? What's the...
Well, we do a tape. The process is, from my viewpoint, is that the actors are brought in on a Thursday, and we do a table read that takes about an hour. And the purpose of it is not really rehearsals for the actors, but it's really a pre-read for the writers, because there's 20 writers on The Simpsons, and they get to hear it for the first time, and usually all the actors are there, and if we're not there, and we are off doing some movie somewhere else, we need to make ourselves available so that our voices were on the telephone and gets piped through a lot of electronic lines and stuff, and it comes out on the table through an intercom system, so that at least, you know, Julie Kavner is not doing the voice of Bart Simpson. You know, that they really want to hear Nancy Cartwright do Bart Simpson or the other voices that I do. So the writers are taking notes. That takes about an hour, and then I'm finished. The actors are done. We're gone for the rest of the day and for the next day, and then it's Saturday, Sunday, and then come Monday, we all go back into the studio from 10 o'clock until about 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and we record that one show. So it takes about 4 hours to do one show. But that's just the voices. It takes another about 5 months to actually do all the animation, because you've got to create the characters, you've got to do the scenes, sometimes there's new characters that are introduced, you've got the music, you've got the sound effects, they have to mix it all together, and in about 5 months it's finished, and then about 6 months later you see it on the air. That's the process.
It's all, I mean, we were talking at dinner that it's done digitally now, but there's still a lot of hand-drawn, everything still has to be entered into the computer, the characters have to be created, and you have to go through that whole process.
That's right.
Yeah. So with the film, it took a few years to get it done. Do you, when you went and did, because I'm sure that the promotional tour was different, because you don't really do any promotions for the TV show. Do you? You go out and do premieres?
Yeah, kind of. It's its own machine at this point in time.
Right.
Yeah.
After 20 years. It's the longest running. In fact, we were talking earlier. It's the longest running scripted show on television, which is just phenomenal. I mean, that's 20 years, and it's surpassed what show?
Gunsmoke.
Gunsmoke, which was the previous one. So that's just amazing. We were talking about Bart hasn't aged one bit, but we were talking about the voices, how because obviously naturally people age and their voice changes, or they're smokers or drinkers, well, not that you are, but that would be the case. That they would do damage to their voices. So they would change, but because Bart really isn't your voice. I mean, it's a voice that you created. It's you store it somewhere in there that you can always adjust it and adapt it to. As we all age, I guess you could go back to that character, to that voice.
Yeah, when I think about some of the greats that when I was growing up in the 60s and the 70s, Mel Blanc is a name that a lot of you parents in the audience will understand. He did Daffy Duck and Tweety and Sylvester and or not Sylvester, Tweety and Yosemite Sam and these characters that that I grew up with, and Dawes Butler, who was Huckleberry Hound and Yogi Bear. They were into their 70s and 80s and still doing. Even George O'Hanlon, who did the voice of George Jetson, he was still doing the voice of George Jetson when he was like 81 years old. And in fact, he was in the hospital, and it was the last thing that he was doing before he actually adios, He loved it, and all of them, very dedicated. And I go, wow, am I still going to be doing Bart Simpson when I'm like 70 years old? Cool.
You can only hope.
Don't have a cow.
Well, that sounds like I'm about 150, but.
Has there been any talk of aging the characters, having them start to age? But I guess after 20 years that would make sense.
Well, in animation, you don't have to worry about it. I mean, Bart has been. Lisa in one episode becomes the president of the United States, and Bart's the first brother, and he's a construction worker, and he's thumbing his way home because his car broke down. It's typical of Bart, but he has been like 40 something, and they've gone back in time when Homer was a sperm. They've lived on the moon, they've lived underwater, and it's like an animation, you can do anything, and that's part of the success of our show is that, on camera, this would never work on camera, as a live action show, but I can just tweak my voice a little bit, and I can,
This is Bart Simpson's voice, and if I'm supposed to be 40 years old, then I can start to drop him down into a range like that. And that's how I do it, They don't technically do it, electronically do it. It's like, Lisa, I know you're the president of the United States, but could you just kind of make my life a little bit easier? Or if Bart's a little baby and and this is regular Bart Simpson, and then if he's going to be 6 years old, I just bring him up into a range like that. And it's still sort of like Bart on helium, but nonetheless, I'm only 6 years old. See,
So did you start out when you worked? Are you from LA, in that area?
No, I'm from Dayton, Ohio, just south of Dayton. Yeah.
So when you went to LA, did you go there with the intention of being an actress or a voice person? Is it something you fell into? How did you?
No, when I was in high school, this is just south of Dayton, Ohio, and growing up, from a very, very young age, like 7 or so, I remember people commenting on my voice and what an unusual voice I had, and I had an androgynous had very short hair when I was a kid, and you couldn't tell boy, girl, because I was like 7, But as I got older, I started playing with my voice and changing it and telling jokes and doing sound effects. Like, I would do things like, this is my favorite one, and this eventually drove my 8th grade teacher nuts, but I would do this. In the back of the room. And he would be like, where is it? Do things like that, or else I could, excuse me, I could fake sneeze really good. And people, you're going, is this part of her act, or is this like for real? But I could fake sneeze, and or burp, I could do things, I could do a water sprinkler. Complete with the water.